What's up, MetaNerdz? This video will be a complete breakdown of the Acclamator-class assault ship. We'll see the context surrounding its creation, a size comparison, take a look inside the ship and understand how it all worked, and then cover its history and all the different variants from the Clone Wars to Imperial era. Let's start with the context. When a Mune banker named Higo Damask traveled to the extragalactic world of Camino to feel out the possibility of creating a clone army, the most difficult obstacle was to work with the human genome, being an ever unpredictable species, while the easiest part was manufacturing the millions of arms, armor, explosives, and ships and vehicles from the ATRT to Venator, as Kuat Drive Yards and their subsidiary Rathana Heavy Engineering had been in the business of plunging a galaxy into war for more millennia than most species had space travel. As Old Republic Fleet Admiral Ego once put it, quote, "Since the dawn of the Republic, Kuat Drive Yards has been the exclusive supplier of many of our greatest warships," end quote. Roughly 800 years before the Clone Wars, the incredibly mineral-rich wild space planet of Rathana was discovered, and promptly bought up by KDY. Here, the subsidiary Rathana Heavy Engineering would be essentially just an extension of the parent company, layers upon layers to avoid Republic intervention, operating for far longer than any politician, and amassing more wealth than entire star systems, causing many to feel companies like Kuat Drive Yards were the true rulers of the galaxy. Much like the way Higo Damask, secretly a Sith known as Darth Plagueis, would also guide galactic affairs from the shadows. When the cloners placed the largest private order in history in the year 31 BBY, just months after the Battle of Naboo, within the company, all work on these machines of war fell under the top-secret Project Icefang, and they even undertook the arduous task of maintaining what became in essence their own private hyperspace lane, directly from Rathana to Camino, going through the Rishi Maze. Keep in mind that canon novels like Master and Apprentice, and tons of Legends books as well, note the intense drama around systems and their hyperspace lanes, how difficult it was to maintain smaller lanes as celestial objects move through space, and how the Republic often did not put up enough credits to maintain some systems, effectively cutting them off like an old town losing a railroad stop. And so think about the power of Kuat Drive Yards to maintain this private lane on their own. In the stilt cities of Camino, Rathana creations like the ATTE were used in their massive training facilities, while the Mandalorian trainers of Jango's Quai Valdar worked with the clones to train on these vessels in Camino and space. I think we often overlook just how incredible this must have been for those Mandalorian mercs, but for a time the entire Republic military was first in their hands. So just imagine the glee these warriors had being able to play with toys of this size. At a length of 752 meters, or nearly half a mile, it was 2/3 the length of the Venator, and more than twice the Arquitens, while being 460 meters, or more than a quarter mile wide, which was 84% that of the Venator, or 27 LAATs across. And it had a height of 183 meters, or 600 feet, making it about 69% that of the Venator, or equal to 19 ATTEs. If it showed up here on Earth, it would be more than twice the length of the Nimitz-class carrier, 8.5 football stadiums across, and twice the height of the Statue of Liberty. And there's no official stats for this, but the size of the ramp seems to be about 29 meters or 95 feet across. I'm basing that on the cross-section and what we see with the Zillo Beast and vehicles coming down the ramp. Now let's take a look inside, but first we have to get past that armor, which is layers of Durasteel infused with neutronium. Almost every ship used Durasteel in the hull, but the Acclamator is the only known ship to be infused with this energy-dispersing material. Moving inside, let's start our tour with the power systems. Unlike the larger Star Destroyers, the main Hypermatter Annihilator reactor does not protrude, and we can see the frame structure that holds it in place. This ring is the fuel inlet manifold, which connects to these series of hypermatter fuel tanks, and we can see a subsidiary backup reactor located here. This fuel is so dense that it is magnitudes heavier than the rest of the ship. And while this fuel is so energy efficient, the insane power requirements of these enormous ships needed to generate shields, jump to hyperspace, and power these incredible engines means that they did need to be regularly refueled, either at space stations or with things like the Ultor-class replenishment ship, and later Imperial tanker, which have been around for years in Legends. Out of this reactor was this channel that emitted streams of particles out of the thrusters. The main thruster has the emitter split up into 8 electromagnetic thrust vectoring panels to control the direction of flow, while the auxiliary thruster is less powerful but enables the Acclamator to have greater maneuverability. Power generated for the rest of the ship is channeled through this power core, and this chamber is not subjected to the artificial gravity generators, while these tubes would take this energy out to other systems. Moving to the aft, we see these power system cooling neutrino radiator grills, which channel out heat from the reactor, the anti-grav repulsor generator, which is the tech that helps the ship float and get off the ground, and the grills also help disperse heat generated from the hyperdrive. Now this system produced a max power of 2 × 10 to the 23rd watts, while the shielding was 7 × 10 to the 22nd watts, with the thrusters pumping out a max acceleration of 3,500 G, and a top atmospheric speed of 1,200 km per hour or 746 miles per hour, making it equal to the incredibly fast TIE fighter, and faster than the Venator, which is often praised for how quick it is. While in hyperspace, it's even more impressive for its role, being able to scramble the enormous complement of troops and vehicles across the entire galaxy faster than every capital ship, even every starfighter. It was quicker than Slave 1 in both atmosphere and in hyperspace, with only the Millennium Falcon under Han's modifications at peak being slightly faster in hyperspace with a 0.5 class rating. And this combined with all the fuel packed on board gave it a hyperdrive range of 250,000 light years, meaning it could cross the entire galaxy and back 2.5 times. For easy maintenance at Republic shipyards, the engine could be removed by itself via these engine servicing release hatches, and there was the power system maintenance vents. As for the armament, you can see the 4 heavy missile and torpedo launcher tubes, which could fire the standard loadout of 100 high-yield proton torpedoes and 20 assault concussion missiles. Spread across the surface were 24 point defense laser cannons for taking out starfighters, and 12 quad turbo laser turrets for every other type of ship from transports to capital ships. And when a target did not need to be captured, or if the enemy forces were in bunkers deep underground, several acclamators would come together to execute a base Delta Zero fleet bombardment. This used the nuclear bomb level power of turbolaser batteries to liquefy rock, turning the crust of worlds into molten slag that would melt through until it reached the enemies. We can only see this one regional shield generator node, but these would have been all along the edge of the ship. And this bridge is much more slender than other Kuat models, and most of the bridge is actually in an area that has no windows, and instead provides tactical information via a holographic display, though there was still this small strip of windows towards the front, while the rest of this entire section was dedicated to sensor arrays. Now, looking at all these decks, there appear to be about 17 in total, having everything you would need for long voyages in space: mess hall recreation areas, storage for consumables that could reach 11,250 tons, equal to the weight of 13,235 dewbacks. There were logistic and strategy conference rooms for generals to meet in, but most of these rooms were the barracks for the 700-man crew, and 16,000 clone troopers. To put that in perspective, that's 8 times the troops aboard a Venator, and 1.6 times that even on the Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer, which shows just how perfect this ship is for its role. Not to slug it out in ship-to-ship combat, but to lead invasions intended to take entire planets. Which means an entire corps could pack into just 3 of these, and still have tons of room left over for auxiliary troops or local allies. And we haven't even talked about the vehicles yet. Along the periphery of the hangar were the 48 ATTE walkers, 36 self-propelled heavy artillery, and 320 speeder bikes, while the majority of the hangar floor would accommodate the LAAT gunship variants, which would be organized into their own landing zones, these alternating numbered rectangles on the floor. And there was a rail system that the gunships could attach to move them to different service areas, along with the descending lift platform that took them to a lower maintenance bay, which could also be used for any of the other vehicles. Ships could enter and exit through several of the side hangar openings, though the main gunship exit was the ventral opening through which LAATs could leave side by side, while the larger carrier would have to exit single file, with the troops and vehicles exiting via the main ramps that open up on each side for rapid deployment, and could be used in concert with the repulsor system to hover in place without landing, so that almost any landing pad could be used even when it couldn't set down, like we see on Kamino. When it could touch down, these 3 enormous stabilizing legs would keep it level on any terrain. And what helps to hold this all together are the acceleration compensators and tensor integrity fields located at the forward and aft, which helps to offset the gravitational warpings of the repulsor lifts and the intense G-forces. Now, the first clone forces ever to be deployed were transported via the at least 12 acclamators that delivered the LAATs, which would race into the Petronaki arena to rescue what was left of the Jedi Strike Team. After this successful opening to the Clone Wars, a massive military display was organized on the upper levels of Coruscant, showing the might of their new army, a sight so impressive that Masamita was temporarily lost in their beauty. The success of the Acclamator at Geonosis immediately sparked a race for Republic military contracts, with Kuat's greatest rival since the Old Republic, Rendili Star Drives, jumping into the fray and hoping to carve out a piece of the pie with spy ships and starships. But Kuat and their subsidiary Rathana were watching the credits roll in as the war raged on, with 1,000 Acclamators ordered in just the first weeks, at a price of 110 million credits each, which is nearly twice the price tag on a Venator. And there were specialized versions like the Nevuda B, which carried 156 V-19 Torrens used during the Battle of Munilinst. And over the course of the war, almost every invasion would involve Acclamators, with Venators securing the star system and preventing reinforcements from making it to the surface. They would see notable uses on Christophsis, Teth, Seleucami, Camino, Sullust, and then to Umbara, Kiros, and Naboo. We saw its enormous hangar and cargo capacity used by Commander Wolffe to deliver aid to Aileen, and during the capture of the orbital ring of Ringovinda. Though during the Battle of Ryloth, we saw that the CIS tactical supercomputers that were the T-Series droids did find a weakness in this ship, using the fact that the J-1 fired solid projectiles instead of plasma balls like a turbo laser, meaning they were less likely to be absorbed and diffused by the energy shield or the neutronium-infused armor plating, finding the perfect area near the thrusters to incapacitate the invading Acclamators. Toward the end of the war, they would produce the Acclamator II, which was inferior in every way, from a certain point of view, as it carried less vehicles, less troops, but it did require a much larger crew. That might seem like another bad thing, but when we see that this is a 28x multiplier, I think we're seeing more evidence of Palpatine's strategy to tie the population to the military. I've mentioned this in a lot of Imperial vehicle breakdowns, but the crew requirements shoot up in the Imperial era where no one can really make sense of them. My theory says that this makes sense when we look at things like the Tarkin and Thrawn books that show how the populations were made loyal, that the military was seen as a stable source of income for many otherwise hopeless people of remote parts of the galaxy, as the Empire pitched itself as at constant war with chaos, seen in the form of local criminals and anarchist rebel terrorists. They would make it seem like they were forced to take over businesses like Price's families on Lothal, and citizens would see signing up for the service as the best way to get out of your dangerous and poor city. So Palpatine took massive amounts of citizens away from the criminals and rebel recruiters of their hometown, stuck them in Imperial ships with strict command structures from loyal superiors, and now these people from all over the galaxy saw their success tied to the success of the Empire. Many regular Acclamator 1s were scrapped, or would see the sad fate of being retrofitted into a pure cargo vessel called the Imperial cargo ship, something that was the target of rebel attacks, most notably the hijacking of 4 of these in the year 0 ABY. And perhaps these, or other modified variants, are what Darth Vader once described as Acclamators that had become slave ships, though some in their original form still operated in the more remote areas of the Empire, while Kuat drive yards continued to dominate with a line of Imperial-class Star Destroyers, and the Victory, which was considered the spiritual successor to the Acclamator. So that's it for the breakdown, but you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind-the-scenes stuff. It was first introduced in Episode 2, with details coming from the Attack of the Clones Incredible Cross-Sections and Complete Cross-Sections books. There are some discrepancies, as they say that the bridge was completely windowless, while in the Clone Wars the depiction has a few windows. And in the original Battlefront 2 we can see it in a frigate role, though almost all other sources have it not used for capital ship combat when it could be avoided. Though of course the armament was powerful, and could if it needed to. And then for the details on the context of this ship, there's some from the Darth Plagueis novel, but a lot of it comes from the Essential Guide to Warfare. So that's it for the Acclamator. If you like videos like this, the best way to help me out is to hit that like button, leave a comment, and share it with somebody who might like it. Those are all the best ways to promote this video in the YouTube algorithm. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and check out the description for things like MetaNerdz merch, discounts on amazing metal print art from Displate, and free Star Wars audiobooks from Audible. You can also find our PayPal and Patreon, and special shout out to our supporters over on Patreon, especially our $25 tier, Chris Garcia, Cass Costello, Matthew Beltrami, Bill Payne, and Brandon Robinson. But most important of all, remember, when your enemy will melt through your planet's crust just to get you, just turn yourselves into the laser sword magicians. And the Force will be with you, always.